Perfect. Welcome back to My Kitten Reads. I'm Eleanor and this is my October reading wrap up. You'll have seen some of these books before because of course I had Dewey's Readathon in October. But some of them you'll have seen before because they're rereads. But there was the whole rest of October as well. So I think I read 8 things in October. So yeah, 8 things in October. So that's not too bad. Not the 10 average, but still not too bad. And believe me, I have made up for it this weekend. But you'll hear about that in November for the November wrap up. But yes, I have read 8 things. So the first thing that I read and finished in October was I reread via audio Every Heart a Doorway by Shana McGuire. You all know how much I love this book. I love it a lot. I finally got hold of this year's book, which is Something Come Tumbling Down, maybe, I think. I'm not sure off the top of my head, but I still haven't read it, but because I decided I wanted to reread via audio the rest of the books because I haven't reread them in a while. So I started, of course, with Every Heart a Doorway, in which Nina arrives at Eleanor West's school for wayward children, having come home from the halls of the dead, and shenanigans ensue. So after that, I read Jane Bennet Takes Charge by Shana Granderson, which is the newest in her Takes Charge series of Pride and Prejudice variations. In this one, Jane Bennet became the serene, never sees the bad in any one person we know after her grandmother left the house when she was a child because of an argument with her mother. But she has an epiphany when she is ill at Netherfield, in terms of the way the sisters are treating her sister Elizabeth. And she gets her backbone back and there's a whole long lost family narrative, and it was enjoyable. It was one of Shana Granderson's Take Charge books and I generally always like those. Then I finished listening to via audio Queen Victoria, Daughter, Wife, Mother, Widow by Lucy Worsley. I've seen Lucy Worsley's history programs. She does a lot of like documentaries and stuff about British history, particularly royal women, and royal castles and that kind of stuff. I think she's like an official custodian of royal residences or something. There's a few, like some sort of official role in British history. And I also I've been listening to her podcast about 19th century murderesses. So she does a lot of sort of things, and I've seen her do it in TV programs. She likes really getting into the detail of like specific days in a person's life. And of course with Victoria, who was a massive diarist, we have a lot of detail about her daily life, and so she picked certain days that were important in Victoria's life to sort of really dig deep into, of the various stages of her life. So that was interesting. And then I listened to the audiobook. It was a very audio heavy start to the month. To Down Among the Sticks and Bones by Shana McGuire, which is the second book in the Wayward Children series. This is a prequel to Every Heart a Doorway, which gives us the origin story of Jack and Jill. It's a little bit dark, a little bit spooky, which I suppose is appropriate for October. And it's about what happens to children whose parents want to put them in a specific box and don't actually give them the room to grow into their own person, and what happens when they are suddenly given that freedom. So that's Down Among Sticks and Bones. Then I finished Uncanny magazine 45. Issue 45. So there were 2 stories that I made notes about. Oddly, they both have to do with homeless people, which was kind of unexpected. But there was a story called The Goldfish Man by Maureen McHugh, which was about a potter, an amateur potter who was making money through selling her stuff on Etsy, but was made homeless during the pandemic. And ended up meeting an alien and running away. But it was more, that kind of was only like the surface. It was more of a slice of life for a person who's living out of the car. yeah, so it was interesting, and it was sort of sad, but it was also sort of hopeful. Yeah. Then, of course, there were the books that I finished during the readathon. Magic's Price by Mercedes Lackey, which is the third in the Last Herald Mage trilogy of the Valdemar universe. It was fun. It was sad. It was generally entertaining. It was kind of a slow start, but still, it was good. I've enjoyed rereading this series. So I don't know when I'll next pick up on Mercedes Lackey to do a reread. I've completely forgotten what other books of hers I've read. There are a bunch that I've picked up secondhand on my bookshelf. Some that probably that I haven't read at all, to be honest. Some of her non-Valdemar stuff. But yeah, who knows when that will be. But I have at least ticked this off. And so that is off my TBR shelves. So that is great. Then, of course, I finally finished rereading Cranky Ladies of History, making little markers of the stories that I really, really loved, often to do with pirates. This is edited by Tansy Roberts and, well, Tehani Wessley at the time. She's currently Tehani Croft. Yeah, so I reread this. I love this book. It's a whole bunch of short stories about women in history who have determinedly carved out a space for themselves, and sometimes in history, and sometimes that space is not great, and they're kind of horrible people, and sometimes they've done something amazing, or sometimes it's a small thing, but they carved themselves out a space that's worth remembering. So they're short stories about all sorts of women. I'm particularly fond of this one kind of Australian story about a woman who was a doctor in the early part of the 20th century, kept getting arrested for speeding because she was on her way to emergencies when automobiles were very new, and she ended up, in the story at least, being a catalyst for change in terms of legislation in terms of preventing legislation that would restrict the speed limit even more and make arrests, being arrested even easier. Because she's like, I'm a doctor, I need to get places. When a child has pulled over a copper cauldron of boiling water from the laundry onto them, I need to be there fast. Sense. So yes, really enjoyed this book, really enjoyed rereading it. And then the last thing I finished in October was, of course, Asterix, the Omnibus number 11, which features Asterix and the Actress, Asterix and the Class Act, and Asterix and the Falling Sky. I wasn't quite as fond of this one as I usually am. They were all new to me. Asterix and the Falling Sky in particular, I found not the Asterix that I love that involved aliens. I didn't particularly love it. Asterix and the Actress was okay. And Asterix and the Class Act is actually a whole collection of really, really short comics. So, it was enjoyable, but it wasn't my favourite Asterix set of stories. And that is what I read in October. I also started a bunch of books, which are sitting there waiting to be finished. Yeah. Sorry, did I say August or October? I can't remember. But October. So, yeah, that's what I read. I don't think there were any authors of colour this month, but there were 3 books with queer characters. So, yay! I really do need to actually check where I'm up to with those particular goals so that I know how to focus my next couple of months of reading. I seem to remember I was on track, so fingers crossed. But yeah, that was my October's reading. Like, subscribe, love to chat books in the comments, and I will see you all again really soon. Bye.